Hey guys, Second here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so today we're going to be taking a look at the World Tournament Awakening that we've gotten for this new World Tournament that started on both versions of the game today, which is the STR HELLFIGHTER 17. Now this guy had an interesting base kit because he's a support unit, supports 2 categories, and obviously if the unit is on both of those categories, they can get a significant amount of support. However, he's definitely a unit that's in a bit of a weird spot in terms of where we would use him on certain teams, especially because I like to do these showcases when the units get their awakenings or their EZAs on a 200% team, which we are going to start off with here. But his only 200% team is the STR Super 17, which is obviously not a unit that is particularly good or has aged well. They weren't even that great when they came out, so obviously with time have gotten even worse. But we'll take a look and see how well he does here. His super attack raises attack and defense for 1 turn, does supreme damage, and greatly lowers attack, so that can be quite helpful in some of these events where you can still attack lower. And then he gets attack and defense 170. He has a high chance to dodge. Then he gets an additional 170 attack and defense and chance to dodge 17% when performing a super attack. So after he attacks, he has a 67% chance to dodge. And he does get an extra 170 on attack, which is pretty good. He gets an additional attack 100% and defense 70%. Launches an additional attack that has a high chance to become a super when there's another android or artificial lifeforms ally in the same turn. So he should get that just at start of turn. So his defense now, because we have Cell on the rotation, should include that 70%. And then he gives androids allies 1 key, 30% attack and 20% defense, and artificial lifeforms allies 1 key, 30% attack and 20% defense. So obviously android artificial lifeforms allies get 2 key, 60% attack and 40% defense. Now the thing with this guy, he's not on a lot of categories: androids, artificial lifeforms, and target Goku. And considering he's only supporting androids and artificial lifeforms, your options for where you want to be running this guy realistically are pretty slim. So you know, it is what it is. We're going to see how we get on. His link set is okay. Obviously, he has the typical Android links like Android Assault, which is useful for defense. He is a GT unit, so he has GT thrown in there. But yeah, unfortunately, as you can see on this starting rotation, where we don't have either of the STR 17s, he doesn't have any links active. So let me just make... Okay, it was Broly, good. I was going to say, I need to make sure who got sealed on this turn. But it was Broly, fortunately, the one that can't attack anyway. So that works out quite nicely. He's going to get super attacked here, so that'll be fine. But yeah, so this guy could be an interesting support. But you think about the extreme buffs and stuff that we've had recently. 5.7, okay. Basic super attack. Is it the same super attack animation? I feel like that start bit is different, right? Is that new? I mean, he got triple super turns, 6.3 million we got up to. I should have double checked his start of turn defense, because getting 170, I did bring the menu up a few times and then forgot to clock it. So if you've, you can always go back and check it. We'll check it start of next turn. But getting 170 on super and then 30% with each super attack is pretty good. And then obviously after attacking has a 67% chance to dodge. So if you're using him in what I would imagine is probably his best sort of setup, where you're running him as like a floating support unit, I could see him being very, very good. In fact, let's get you guys floated off because you are a support. So we'll do this. And then the problem is, a lot of the units on this team themselves are quite outdated at this point. It's not exactly a top tier team. And then when it comes to androids and artificial life forms, we have had some new leaders recently. I suppose with the new Boo setup, who would you... Is he on any of their actual leader skills though? I was going to say, because all the Boos are on artificial life forms, so he would be providing support to them, and he gets his passive activated by having an artificial life forms character on the rotation. But he's not going to share a lot of links with them, which obviously isn't going to help too much. And it's only going to be the artificial lifeform support, not the extra android support. So it's 30% attack, 20% defense, which is better than nothing. But with how strong the Boo team is, and some of the other artificial lifeforms options, I don't know if you would run this guy on that team over some of those other units. And then obviously, you know, you've got like the physical LR androids here when, you know, their EZA is like a year old, right? We're at that period now where this is the celebration last year where we got 21 and then the Int Super Saiyan Trio Carnival LR. So we would have like that, we'd have had that EZA by now, right? So their EZA like a year old at this point. Right, he got sealed, which is annoying. He does share every link with them except for shattering the limit though, so that is good. 200k defense is his start of turn here with these links active. So with 200k defense, obviously if he's getting 170% on super, that's another like almost 350. So he goes up to about 550, and then obviously each super attack is a 30% raise. So on that previous turn when he got like a triple super, obviously I think his start of turn defense was a bit lower on the previous turn, but off of 200k we're still talking around 60-65k defense per super potentially. So if he supers 3 times, getting another like 180 or so, that could put him up to a bit over 700k, 750k defense, which, I mean, for a floating support unit, free to play especially, you got to remember all of these World Tournament cards, like technically they are free to play. I guess it's not terrible, and he does at least have like a 67% chance to dodge to back it up, but obviously we're at the point now where as these events are starting to get harder, like he won't tank normals from some bosses, right? And obviously with this release being a simultaneous release, Global finally has Goku and Frieza, so that's kind of one of the events that we could consider, you know, if when harder content comes out, it's going to be harder than Goku and Frieza, most likely. So you got to think about how would this unit fare in that event, and obviously in that event, like I say, he probably wouldn't be against especially against Goku and Frieza, and especially when they've lost 50% HP, he wouldn't be tanking normals from them. So he would be completely reliant on the dodge. So 67% chance to dodge, otherwise you get probably almost completely and utterly destroyed, is probably not great. It's just unfortunate because, like, I remember when this guy first came out, I'm not sure, and obviously, like, World Tournament units, they come out and they don't get awakenings, so they're already kind of in a weird spot, and like when trying to compare them to other units, but like he could be a unit that could work really well on like the GT sort of setup if, you know, they didn't ruin the villains, like bosses categories, right? Movie bosses, GT bosses, super bosses, by making them only the boss like of the arc, rather than making them all of the extreme characters like they do with the super class. It's like GT Heroes is every single super class character, whereas GT Bosses is only the main bosses of the arcs, which means Hellfighter 17 and like the Trenchcoat 17, they're not on GT Bosses, which would be a massive help to just the team overall, if they were, like, because GT Bosses is a category that desperately needs like a bit more anyway, and yeah, having like a whole bunch more units that could just go on the team would obviously be very, very helpful. Who's sealed on this turn? Cell. I don't really want Cell to be sealed, but then I need to try and save the item as well. But yeah, I mean, this team is just very rough, and the fact that he's only on 3 categories, like, you really don't have a ton of options for places to run this unit. It almost feels like, to a certain extent, that they're just kind of like going through the motions with these World Tournament characters, because for this guy, he's on so few teams. He's only got 3 categories for a start, and then he only has 1 200% leader. So if they made this guy, like, we all know Mr. Boo is kind of an exception for a World Tournament unit, he's pretty good. If they made this guy, I know he's not an EZA, and Mr. Boo is, just to clarify, this guy's obviously just awakened to a TUR, but if they made this guy, like, hands down the best World Tournament card, like, what does that do to the meta of the game? Like, nothing, right? Like, if this guy could be considerably better, and it still wouldn't make a huge difference overall, like, people wouldn't suddenly be smashing out all the hardest events and never need to spend any more money or any stones. So, like, when units are really limited and they're only on, like, a few teams, I really don't see the reasoning behind like not making them really good. And especially with how limited this guy is with the whole GT bosses thing, he could certainly be considerably better, and it really wouldn't like have a huge effect on like the overall meta or anything like that, right? So I think we kind of really don't have a choice here. We just have to do this. Let Broly finish off Bootank's here and then move on to the next phase. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. There's not really, like I say, like you could kind of try and fit him onto like a Boo team, but there's probably just better options than him, even with the little bit of support that he does give. Because I mean, like we got the new Boohan, and he leads power absorption or transformation boost, so this guy's not on his team anyway. And then you've got the Int Fat Boo, who you could use Majin Buu Saga, Sworn Enemies or Storied Figures, so he's not on his team either. So this guy, even with some of the other artificial lifeforms characters that have released recently, he's not on any like of the full teams. And then we start looking at, then you're just ending up running like artificial lifeforms 170 or an LR or something like that, and then just the whole team overall is then just not as good, right? So let's go ahead and transform these guys here. I guess we might as well get one more turn in. I mean, like overall, like his numbers aren't god awful, but they're not good. Like getting a couple of supers that are doing like 6 to 7 million, that's okay for a support unit, but getting up to like at most around 7 to 800k defense with no other defensive tech other than relying on dodge, it's definitely going to be a little bit scary in any actual like really difficult events. In fact, how are you going to fare here in slot 1 even? Shall I just heal? I guess, yeah, we're probably not going to keep going long enough to get to the next phase where we get the rotation locking, so the Senzu Bean's not really needed here. But yeah, man, so you guys know, like, if you've been around the channel for a while, I mean, you can see him right below, right? But, like, I'm a fan of Super 17. His cards always seem to get... never really get done justice. Like even AGL Super 17, people did not like him on release, and then of course when the EZAs happened for the 120 leaders, he kind of ended up being one of the better aging ones. But then the LR Tech Super 17, even from release, was very awkward. This STR Super 17, same kind of thing. And then yeah, unfortunately these other units around him, like the Trenchcoat 17 and the other Hellfighter 17s, like they were okay when they got their EZAs, but then they started to age out. GT bosses became a thing, and then like, yeah, you can put Super 17 on there, but you can't put any of the other like 17 variants from that arc like on that team because they don't count as GT bosses. So overall, this guy, it almost feels like you kind of want to say like he never really had a chance, right? Because even with his kit being good, like even if he was a little bit better than he is, you're just so limited in like the places you would use him, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. These guys still can't transform, so I guess we just put Broly in slot 1. But yeah, I mean, with all of his links active here, apart from Shattering the Limit, we're starting out with 200k defense. Like I say, it goes up to around 750 to 800k after he super attacks, which, you know, unless he's getting that dodge from his passive, he's not going to be tanking normals from some of the toughest bosses. And he just really doesn't have like a specific... There's no real team in the meta where you just go, oh yeah, this guy can go straight into this team. This is what a good addition to this team this Awakening will be. And that was the thing with like the Mr. Boo EZA, because we mentioned him already. Like he's a unit that for the Boo team, people straight away were like, oh yeah, he can actually fit quite nicely in here. He's like another differently named Boo, and his EZA was pretty good. And there was like a space for him to go into a team. Whereas unfortunately this guy, there's just not really any teams really like super worth running him on at the moment. You know, we got a couple of like extra super turns. Like I say, 6 to 7 mil attack stats, not bad for a free-to-play support unit. He has been consistently dodging. He greatly lowers attack, which again is still really useful in some events where the enemy can be attack lowered. It's just unfortunately, I just feel like there's not a huge amount of space for this guy to really fit in and have any sort of impact on teams. Like I say, you can use him You could use them on some fun, like, weaker teams for, like, not end game events, like battlefield setups, new Infinite Dragon Ball history stages just to mess around, stuff like that. But obviously he's not going to be really a unit that I would consider for any sort of, like, top tier difficulty end game content. But I mean, it is what it is. We always say you got to kind of take these World Tournament units with a pinch of salt compared to the other units, because they are all technically free to play. But let me know what you guys think of the STR Hellfighter 17 Awakening. Like I say, in a vacuum, I don't think his unit, like his kit, I don't think he's like terrible. He's not super great. Like I say, he doesn't get out to really great defense and does rely on dodge, but he's certainly not awful. Like I probably wouldn't go as far as to say he's unrunnable, like in a vacuum. But then when we look at the overall state of the game and teams and the meta and all that kind of stuff, there just isn't really a great place for him. So it's pretty unfortunate. The art's cool, the super attack animation's pretty cool, but like when he gets his EZA, the sticker effect will be cool because he has the two like heat orbs. But yeah, unfortunately nothing too crazy at this point in time. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new, check out the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.